That was very insightful and very powerful. So your last statement that we have to face the new reality, and we will not go back to the what we think was normal. There is a new normal, and so that is a very powerful statement. And I think from your input, it shows that there is a way, there's a direction on how universities can survive and in fact excel in this new normal, the new normal of the university. So thank you very much, Ibu Dekan. And we're now going to have a conversation, and that conversation will be led by Bapak Dr. Andreas Tameilala. He is a leading public health expert in Indonesia, and he's the chairman of the University of Gadjah Mada's Center for Public Health Policy and Management, one of Indonesia's leading think tanks in the area of public health. And obviously, today, public health is overarching towards everything else. Economists refer to public health. Business, public health. Industry, public health. Education, public health. Everything, media, public health. Everything is now centered to public health. So public health is front and center. And so with that, I will give Dr. Andreas Tameilala the floor to lead the conversation and maybe make some remarks in that matter. Now, I just want to add one thing. I'm in the studio of University of Gadjah Mada School of Medicine's studio lab. And so we are appearing in two different screens, but actually he's right beside me. So this is the new reality of virtual reality. Thank you very much, Dr. Andreas. The floor is yours. And I'd like to make Dr. Andreas, just recognize Mr. Phil Turtle, the national president of AIBC is on this Zoom here. And also I noticed Joanne Hashim representing the Victoria government is also here. Thank you. Please, Dr. Andreas.
Yes, thank you, Pak George. So I think you will lead the conversation, but I just give short remarks with these two distinguished speakers, Professor James and Professor Ova. We can see that one point that really for me is quite interesting is about the changing trust to the source of knowledge, which is university. And Professor Ova has already described what have been done in these schools and how big it was the investment or the next investment would be to create such kind of ecosystem to support the new era of online learning. And then I would like to talk in the perspective of the demand side, the stakeholders or the customers of the university. Do they know about the change that has been doing in this university? Because Professor James mentioned about the new social contract as well. They have a new expectation. They have new perspectives on the education. And also the substitution of the university, they are also coming up. We can see now that everybody can learn from anywhere in the platform, in the internet, web-based learning can be found everywhere and anywhere or anytime. We can search that. And based on that, we can see that the expectation of the people also would be changed. But within this first year, maybe their level of acceptance maybe not as high as maybe on the next 2 or 3 years. Because they can see that their needs may not be fulfilled in the university because of this transition is not really a complete transition into the real online learning system. And we can see that we're still talking about the competency. We're still talking about the learning outcome. We're still talking about the classical curriculum, which is maybe should be redesigned during this online learning system. And we also can see that the learning style of the people might be changed as well, because they can get another source of information. They can use another tools to develop their own skills. and also they can have another opinion about some information that they have got already. So I think this is uh, the point that we should also discuss about the expectations of the demand side, because the changing social contract means that everybody will see that maybe, for example, the tuition fee, yeah, before they can accept the certain amount of tuition fee because of the investment of the buildings and everything is quite expensive. But now we can use one or two studios, and we manage the pre-recorded materials, and we can put that on the web, and we don't need that big building anymore. So I think, Pak George, this is the point of the demand side that should be taken into account, yeah, into this discussion. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Thank you,
So,
Pak George.
thank you. So that is a serious issue, the demand side.
Yeah.
And if you're a university president, what's ticking in your head right now is, have you overinvested in, you might say, cement and steel, or where is the allocation of the investments of the future? And that relates to what Dr. Andre says, the demand side. And so with that, I want to ask a question before we go to the audience. Yeah. And that is to Professor James and Professor Ofai, because apparently what Professor Ofai has just basically shared with us, and this is coming from a medical expert, one of Indonesia's leading medical experts who is shaping policy in Indonesia. And that is that we're not going back to normal. That's a reality. And so change is the real deal. And the question is, and this is one I want to get a sense out of from Professor Ofai and then Professor James, and then you could provide remarks, Dr. Andre, is that what percentage of the academia in Indonesia, and then for Professor James in Australia, has, in that curve that Professor Ofai has mentioned, accepted reality? What percentage is still in denial, and what percentage has accepted reality and ready to change? And this is a general, yeah. So Professor Ofai, I'm not just indicating from this university here, but generally the landscape, the academic landscape, from your sense, just instinctive wise. Could you give me that percentage? And then Professor James from Australia, please, Professor Ofai.
Thank you, George. I think this is related with the literacy of the technology. When we look at the proportion, perhaps about 20% of our staff are the young staff, and they are very literate, and they are ready for jumping to the new era. And I think about 60% are in the middle. They are followers. They are not resistant to change, but it is difficult for them to initiate the change itself. So they are much more to become a follower. And the rest, about 20%, is perhaps the old one. Yeah, that is difficult, yeah, to accept this new change and keep with their own way. Yeah. That is my answer. That is the best guess.
Okay,
Thank
so
you,
20, 60, 20, yeah?
20,
20%,
20, yeah.
the millennials, the so-called
Yes.
millennials are multitasking and ready to go.
Yes.
60% will follow the millennials. I guess
Yes.
that's including me.
Yes, yes, including me too.
We'll follow the millennials. And we still probably wish we were a millennial. And then the next 20%, that needs to, they're still in denial, as if you follow that curve that you shared with us. Okay, very good. From Australian perspective, Professor James, what does that landscape look like?
Thank you. Look, I'd like to also say a couple of things. One about the new normal, and I think it's a really important point. but I also, and I totally agree with Professor Ola. But what is also important to recognize is that we've always had a new normal. There's, almost every day we wake up, like I said, every year is a new normal. There's a new government legislation, or there's a new technology, or there's a new expectation, or a new competitor. And so there's never been going back. It's always been one of the challenges that we've had. And so I think that's why I think your question, George, is such a great question, because I think for me, I would say about 25% are very active in changing, are very much not only want to change, but driving change, attempting to be ahead of the pack. And I think that's important. Probably about 50% sit in the middle, that are willing to change. And I would say that a lot of them suffer from change fatigue. So sometimes they will move backwards a bit and want to slow things down. And others within that group are enthusiastic, but don't have the confidence or the skills to adapt. But I think, probably about 50%. And then I'd say about 25% would be people that are resistant, that their imagination sees one way, the old way. But I think that 25% with COVID has been shaken. I think now that like if we were having a conversation 12 months ago, that 25% was like, the Great Wall. There was no breaking that barrier. But I think COVID has forced even them to adapt. So I think that 25% can change is very vulnerable to resistance. I think they're much more willing to change. And I think, again, this is part of the really positive. I mean, like I said, never waste a good crisis. This crisis has an opportunity to make us reflect on what our practices are. And the last thing I'd like to say about the balance between face-to-face and online is to think about it, the fact that Western Sydney University and other universities describe ourselves as anchor institutions, right? That we're placemakers, we create place. We just don't only provide an education. Now, an anchor institution can provide a very virtual and a very, cloud experience, and that's important. And that remains to be important and will become even more important, especially with new technologies like virtual realities and artificial intelligence and so on. But also I think that a lot of universities like mine, and I know others, also take pride in creating that place, in being placemakers. And I think that's an experience that I think makes it still very valuable. Having that physical location is very valuable. For example, this sounds crazy, but at this point we're building a new campus, right? Yeah. And the response from it's going into a place in Western Sydney called Bankstown, in the central business district of Bankstown, and that place has never had a campus there. And what it's doing, it's becoming a beacon for the aspirations of the community, a physical beacon. And I think it's important. That is a very important dimension of being placemakers. And I can sit there and say there's a lot of universities I've visited across the world that have that important dimension of what they do. So it's that balance is one that we shouldn't be too careful to sort of say, oh, well, no more physical buildings, because I still think they're very important.
Well, that is very, very insightful. So Professor Dr. Andre, Professor Ofa gave us an average, of the landscape of Indonesian academia. And then Professor James also gave pretty much similar average. And I think one input from Professor James is the concept of space. I mean, I'm in a university that's like, the whole university is a city, it's a district. And many campuses are, in fact, we are accredited. This is very key. Our accreditation is based on how much more cement and steel we build. Now, how is that going to realign with what Professor Ofa said about the new reality and change, and what Professor James said about space? And this leads to accreditation. Go ahead, Dr.
Yes. So I think if the hard structures has changed, then the soft structures also must be changed. So we cannot use the old or classical measurement, yeah, for the new level of normal. And then we can see that all that instruments to accredit or to assess the university or even the teaching learning process must be changed. Yeah, because we can see that we are using such kind of technology, and then some academic atmosphere or the psychological contact or physical contact is really decreasing. And then is it also affecting the result of the teaching learning outcome? We never know. So that's why we should change also the way we assess the university.
Yeah, so
Thank you,
this is
Pacho.
this is in line with our new minister, Minister of Education, Pak
Yeah.
Nadiem Makarim,
Yeah.
a 36-year-old young entrepreneur thinking out of the box with Campus Merdeka because it actually fits with the change, right?
Yeah.
So how do you see that? I mean, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the policy itself it is already trans avant-garde. Yeah, it's already moving forward. But then all the instrument down there in the operational level is still our challenge.
okay,
Yeah.
it's the guidelines, yeah.
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 Professor Ofa, what do you think, Professor Ofa? This because obviously Australia, Indonesia is very connected in terms of the education sector, and in Indonesia we have a new dynamic with a new minister, young. He's thinking out of the box. He's a technopreneur, built a unicorn. Actually, you fit right for the challenges of this time, which is very, you might say, virtual in terms of its implementation. What do you think, Professor, of Campus Merdeka in COVID-19? Does this fit in terms of the change that we need to make? Go ahead, Professor.
I mean, the campus Merdeka is, I think, having been well, running faster with the COVID. Yeah, the acceptance of the campus Merdeka. So what I mean here is, before we actually already started using the online, yeah, since several years ago. But the move, yeah, the changing is very, very slow. Even, yeah, when we try to involve many speakers from different university and also different countries, using the online is more feasible and it's easier. But with this COVID, then it is realized that everyone is learning that it is much easier. And so now the acceptance of the campus Merdeka, even for the faculty of medicine here, which is not obliged to follow the campus Merdeka, now is becoming increasing because of the COVID. Yeah. So in fact, that we need, yeah, to combine, to blend, yeah, between the virtual and also the face-to-face. So now it's more easier. I think welcome Campus Merdeka. Yeah, we are all looking forward, yeah, for implementing it. And I think in our university, we also have a new policy about the teaching learning process and also how the achievement of the competence and how the assessment of the competence is set for the new Campus Merdeka. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Pak.
yeah, thank you, Professor. Well, this is very refreshing
It's
because
positive.
yeah, very refreshing, very, very positive. That so
Yeah.
the idea of for our Australian friends, Campus Merdeka is campus independence, and it is a total new thinking of Indonesian higher
Yeah.
education. And what Professor Ova is saying is, due to the impact of COVID-19, this is actually
Accelerating.
accelerate the concept of
Yeah.
campus independence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's very refreshing. I think educators, especially in higher education all over Indonesia, which is quite large in terms of a sector, about over 5,000 campuses nationwide.
Yeah.
We'll see that as a refreshing thought. And I think together with this new young minister, we should work together and collaborate in creating that new platform of what campus independence or campus Merdeka will
Yeah.
look like. Very
Yeah.
good.
Can
Yes,
I
go ahead,
give
Professor.
just one example? Yeah,
Yeah.
we just have done about since October that we have electives for the Faculty of Medicine from different Faculty of Medicine, and this is done. I think in the first time, yeah, in Indonesia,
Yeah.
and this is because of the COVID and because of Campus Merdeka. So I think it's possible.
Yeah, so it's possible, and it actually, it becomes a positive. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very good. That's very
Thank
good. So very good. And now I've been asked by our organizers here to go to the audience. Yeah. Before I go to the audience, here we go. We have some questions here. Yeah. Before I go to the audience, though, I think I'll give a shout out to Mr. Phil Turtle, if he's still on the call, the national president of Australia Indonesia Business Council, our sister organization. Are you still in the call, Phil? Phil, are you? Here you go. There you go, Phil. Hi. Coming out of Perth, Australia. So we've got a lot of friends coming out of Australia. Perth, we have Peter Craven, the president of Tasmania, AIBC. Also Joanna Hashim from Victoria government. But please, Phil, representing our audience here, maybe give your food for thought here for us. And what you're thinking is behind this very, very, you might say, insightful and high level conversation in terms of the university and the fate of the university. Please, Phil.
Well, George, thanks for the kind introduction and for having me today on the webinar. I've really enjoyed listening in to all of the very distinguished speakers sharing their thoughts on what the new normal, or the fact that there probably is no new normal confronting us. Very buoyed by the optimism that our speakers have shared. And I've been frantically making notes myself for some of the themes to pursue further. Listening to the professor from Western Sydney University talk about his 4 priorities. I really enjoyed his reflections upon what the university mandate is, the important part that plays in society, the concept of student citizenship and those sorts of things. And George, I know that you and I are also on a follow-up webinar on Thursday. So there's been a number of themes and ideas which have been shared today, which I look forward to embracing in that conversation. Also, great to see Todd Diaz from the embassy on the line today. Obviously, they play a really important part. And you also mentioned our very, very dear friend Joanna Hashim from Victorian government, Global Victoria, focusing on education. So again, looking forward to having further conversations with Joanne. Again, no specific reflections other than those from today. A very important conversation. Todd also mentioned those, almost surprisingly, how large education plays a role in the export relationship, or the trade relationship with Indonesia, ranking as our #1 export. So still very important amongst all of the important industries in which Australia and Indonesia work together. So, Pope George, thank you very much. You've been a superstar moderator once again today. So I'm in awe, and we'll look forward to picking up some of your tips for future events. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Phil. And I noticed you're coming out of Perth, right?
I am in Perth today. Sorry, I probably should be wearing a mask today, but just for you.
Right. And Curtin and Murdoch are fully online over there. Yeah. Now they've changed their structure. Yeah.
Yes, it seems a lot of the universities have thought that bricks and mortar is not the way for the future. So all online. But again, I was really interested in the Gajah Mada and Western Sydney University reflections upon some of the challenges that moving online, some of the psychological challenges, the things that work well and the things that work less well. So again, it was reflected that COVID-19 has really accelerated our move dramatically into digital and online, and outpaced our capacity for that change, and probably pushed too far with the best of intentions in certain areas. So it'll be really interesting to see how that corrects over coming months. We're still a long way to go before we're out of this COVID situation as well. So, it's a daily journey of discovery.
Yes, the new reality. Thank you, Phil. And let me give a shout out to another participant here, Bu Juan Hashim, yeah, from Victoria Government. Are you still on the call, Bu?
Yep, I'm still on the call.
Very good. So you're in charge of higher education for Victoria, obviously a powerhouse in Australia and education. Maybe your thoughts on this topic today.
Well, it's been a fantastic event. Thank you for sort of setting this up, because I think this is the start of the conversation. And I think this actually starts us looking at different types of models in terms of delivery. We've had, you know, the bricks and mortar, and that has gone well for a significant amount of time, but we do have to change. And I think from this conversation, it's very clear that there is change happening, and it's A, how we embrace it, and B, where we take it. So I really think this has been a really great conversation to have, and I look forward to the one on Thursday. On the Victorian government side, when we talk about sort of, you know, some of the types of delivery, you know, EdTech is also something that's sort of front in mind when we think about how we're going to deliver sort of our courses going forward. But I think also we need to look at sort of, you know, the Campus Merdeka sort of model and where that can also go. So it seems to be that there's lots on the table and lots of conversations to be had going forward. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, I've really, really enjoyed today.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. And obviously, you know, there's going to be a lot of changes. And again, let's all work together, as Professor Ova said. We need to collaborate to be able to define that change of the future. And now we have also from Western Sydney University, is Mr. Ian Sebastian still here on the call? Ian. Okay, is he
But George, I think there is questions on the
Okay.
chat board. Let me read it for Professor Ova.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Andre,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, Professor Ova, one question for you is regarding the length of the study. Can you see the question on the chart board, Professor Ova?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Yeah, from Dia Farmasita. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Yeah, for the length of the study is still the same, remain the same, because we also combine the learning process. So things that can be done online, that it is online, but some of the skills training is still keep face to face, but we rearrange the grouping. So to maintain the safety for the students and also for the instructors. So we can keep the length of the study as similar with the previous period. And also about for the IUP, for the international students. So we don't do the foreign electives, but we did for the last period is like they participate in online electives. So this is also one of the change that we have. So instead of going abroad, they also can do the follow the course online MUC, but still from the foreign university. So that is one of the requirement that now is finished, yeah, for the last period. Yeah, I think there is no problem with we just have to adjust the process of the studying. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ova. So this is what I really mean about the expectation from the demand side, yeah, because with the online system, everything can be how do you call it?
Crunched.
Yeah, crunched down. Yeah, we can shorten the time, the period of studying and everything. So we should also try to advocate the community that the quality takes time. Yeah, and regardless the technology that we are using, and still we need sometimes, yeah, to produce knowledge, attitude, and practice, particularly the medical school. Yeah, is there any more question in the chat board, please? Oh, okay, yeah. I think that's all about George.
Thank you. So about that, on that issue, I'll give it back to Professor James, because this is an interesting issue. Do we really need to study for 3 to 4 years for a bachelor's degree? I mean, if we got this new reality going on, can't we do it like, I mean, as a student, I mean, as a former student, like, again, I wish I was a millennial, but I'm not. But, you know, could you do this thing in 2 years? Or what do you think, Professor James? Obviously,
Yeah,
medical school is a bit different, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think there's two things about that that I think are very important. One is the way that knowledge is a building block. So I think 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, that varies, but I think it's the experiences that we have while we're studying. So I think, you know, just 2 years or 3 years of any education system without real experience is not going to give us the answer. This is why I think internships are so important. This is why I think we need to make sure that we reimagine the way that we deliver it. So one of the things we could think about is, you know, maybe it is 2 years where people spend more time during the holiday break working, or maybe it's the same thing, but 4 years. But what they do is they almost have like a subscription model. They drag down the bits and pieces that they think they need to learn. I mean, this is the thing about education now, that if I taught you a computer program today, in 2 years' time, that program is pointless because the knowledge is changing so quickly. So, you know, so in some ways, the basics don't change. We need to teach those basics, but in other ways, we need to be creative about how we deliver the additional parts. And they could be based on, you know, that doesn't have to be within a 2 or 3 year period. It could almost be as an alumni, like an alumni from my university. Wouldn't it be fantastic if you had, for the next 10 years, access to a whole bunch of knowledge on a subscription model? Say you paid a one-off fee and you could access it as you need it. So that way we're not thinking of that way. What we're doing is we're bringing the idea of lifelong learning to life. We're making it real and tangible. And I think that would be really exciting if we could deliver something like that. If our students, when they graduate and they say they come back to Indonesia, or your students come to Australia, and while they're there, we have an understanding that says, oh, well, because you've paid, it's like Spotify. I want to download that lesson. Or I want to understand this thing. I want to attend this class, and we can continue to download it. So we continue that knowledge journey. So I think that's the real big challenge for us, is how do we deliver this kind of education in these longer term models?
Yeah, very good, Professor. So I guess with Professor James' last comment, that probably will conclude our conversation here today. But I would like to end by giving a round of last remarks. Yeah, last remarks from Professor Ofa on her thoughts regarding this issue, and then maybe this could be a beginning of a collaborative conversation among thought leaders and academics in Australia and Indonesia, and Australia, on how together we can create that new reality in the university sector. Please, Professor Ova.
Yeah, thank you very much, George. I think from the COVID-19, we learned a lot that change is the way ahead. And we need to collaborate together to face the challenge together. And I think to set up a new destiny for all of us. I think that is my close remark.
So let's work together to set up a new destiny for all of us. That's very thoughtful remarks, Professor Ofa. And Professor James, did you want to have any last remarks before we end this, conclude this session?
Look, just to thank you, George, for your efforts. And it was just such a pleasure listening to Professor Ofa and listening to Dr. Andrews' talk. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed it. And I think, as I said, this is a fantastic chance for us to take advantage of those changes and deliver for our students and our nations and our communities the best possible results. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is a beginning of a conversation between Indonesian and Australian academics, thought leaders, and educators on how together we can move forward. And the Indonesian Australian Business Council, together with the Western Sydney University and University of Gadjah Mada, organizing this event with the support of the Australian Embassy in Jakarta. We want to thank everyone here that has joined us to think together and to collaborate together to, as Professor Ofa has just shared with us, establish the new destiny of the university, in which the fate of the university will continue to survive. The university will survive, and that is the fate. But it will survive in a new destiny, in a new reality. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this virtual dialogue, and we hope to see you soon in the next IABC roundtable and connections that we will continue to have. Thank you. And again, thank you, Dr. Andre, for your support and for allowing us to do this in this teaching studio. And thank you, Ian Sebastian from Western Sydney for facilitating this dialogue also. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
And stay safe, stay well. Salam sehat.
Yeah.
Salam sehat. Thank you.